What if the first sign of dementia wasn't memory loss, but a sudden emotional storm? They're not confused, they're not forgetting names, but something is off. Their reactions feel strange, their energy shifts, and the person you thought you knew starts to feel unfamiliar. These aren't just mood changes, they're warnings from a brain under pressure. And in many cases, they show up years before anyone realizes it's dementia. In this video, you'll discover 9 odd mood swings that may look harmless, but could be the earliest clues that memory loss is quietly on its way. Let's begin with number 1. Sudden anger over small inconveniences. 3 years prior to her Alzheimer's diagnosis, 72-year-old Corinne started reacting explosively to minor issues. A burned slice of toast, a misplaced TV remote, or even a simple question from her husband could trigger her anger. Her family was taken aback by these episodes, as they had never seen her behave this way. As her anger kept escalating, so did her confusion. One day, she called 911 on her husband, insisting he was an imposter who had replaced the real one overnight. Research confirms that irritability and uncontrolled anger can be early signs of dementia caused by weakened emotional control in the brain. The brain loses its ability to regulate frustration, so minor annoyances trigger disproportionate emotional storms. It's not a personality shift, it's a neurological one, and it often marks one of the very first cracks in emotional stability. When sudden anger feels too big for the situation, and especially when it's new, it may not be moodiness. It may be the brain unraveling behind the scenes. Number 2. Outbursts of crying that don't match the situation. 4 years before he received a diagnosis of mixed dementia, Willie, 74, found himself crying unexpectedly during simple activities. Whether eating breakfast, enjoying light comedies, or hearing his wife discuss the weather, emotions would overwhelm him. One day, he burst into tears when he misplaced a pair of scissors. His doctor attributed it to stress, but as his crying spells worsened, so did his grip on reality. One afternoon, he began sobbing uncontrollably, while setting the table, saying he was preparing a farewell dinner for his own funeral. Studies show that emotional lability, frequent intense mood changes, often appears early in cognitive decline, especially in women. As emotional circuits weaken, even small moments can trigger a flood of tears because it has no other way to cope. The crying may look irrational, but it's really the result of a system losing its ability to regulate emotional volume. When someone cries in moments that don't call for it, the problem might be deeper than it looks. Number 3. Laughing at inappropriate times. 2 years prior to her frontotemporal dementia diagnosis, Rose, 76, began to chuckle during serious discussions. She laughed when her granddaughter shared stories about bullying at school. She even giggled while discussing funeral plans. Her family perceived this behavior as insensitivity. However, as the laughter grew more frequent, her sense of reality began to slip. One evening, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror, laughing and waving, convinced someone else was living inside it. Experts report that inappropriate laughter is a form of emotional disinhibition, and it's a well-documented early sign of frontotemporal dementia. As the frontal and temporal lobes degenerate, people lose the ability to gauge social context, and their emotional responses disconnect from reality. The laughter may feel cheerful, but it's often a red flag that emotional judgment is deteriorating. When someone laughs at pain or grief and doesn't realize it's odd, their emotional filter may be slipping. Number 4. Mood crashes after small changes in routine. Gregory, 70, started to respond intensely to minor changes in his life. If his wife rearranged items in the kitchen, he would often sulk or become withdrawn for the remainder of the day. Even a mere alteration in his walking path would visibly disturb him. As his frustration over small changes deepened, so did his paranoia. One night, He taped over every light switch, convinced flipping them alerted people watching through the walls. That emotional uncertainty first emerged 5 years prior to his diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. A clinical review found that early dementia reduces cognitive flexibility, making the brain resist even small routine changes. What used to be no big deal becomes emotionally jarring, and the reaction can last hours or even days. This kind of inflexibility is often misread as stubbornness, but it's actually mental exhaustion from trying to adjust to something the brain can no longer process smoothly. When someone spirals over harmless changes, it may be a sign their emotional system is reaching its limit. Don't assume it's just aging. Don't wait until the memory loss begins, because by then, the damage is already done. Call their doctor, write things down, get a cognitive screening. Early intervention makes all the difference, and you might catch dementia before it takes hold. Now, let's continue to number 5, going silent or withdrawn during family events. 3 years prior to her Lewy body dementia diagnosis, 83-year-old Thelma noticeably changed during family dinners. She became quiet, often listening but rarely speaking. The warm stories and questions she once shared vanished. One time, at a birthday party, she left early, explaining that the noise hurt her brain. Over time, confusion set in. One morning, she pointed at her son-in-law and whispered, "That man's been following me all day." Then she locked herself in the laundry room. Her daughter called the doctor the next day for a cognitive evaluation. Recent evidence supports that emotional withdrawal and flattening are early signs of cognitive decline, particularly in Alzheimer's and Lewy body dementia. This isn't shyness or disinterest. It's a breakdown in social processing and emotional endurance. Group settings become overwhelming, and the brain's natural urge to engage begins shutting down, even when the person deeply wants to connect. When someone starts fading in social situations, not because of age but as a pattern, their emotional withdrawal may be the first visible sign of something invisible. Number 6. Swinging from warmth to coldness. Maribel, 75, once welcomed her grandchildren with warm hugs, laughter, and cherished tales that only she recalled. Suddenly, her behavior shifted dramatically. She hardly made eye contact, responded with terse answers, and dismissed affection with an indifferent shrug. Gradually, her sense of reality began to slip. One morning, she took down every family photo and threw them away, saying, "These people don't live here anymore." That transformation in her attitude first started 4 years before her Alzheimer's diagnosis, and it never reversed. A medical study suggests that empathy loss and emotional flatness are early indicators of Alzheimer's disease. People may swing from affectionate to indifferent, leaving loved ones confused and hurt. This isn't moodiness. It's the brain losing the ability to mirror and respond to emotional cues, even when the person still cares deeply. When someone becomes unrecognizable emotionally, the root may not be apathy, but early neurological change silently reshaping how they connect. Number 7. Deep irritation when corrected or challenged. 2 years before a diagnosis with Alzheimer's, Franklin, 68, began reacting with visible tension to small correction. When his wife reminded him they had already paid a bill, or gently noted he'd told the same story, he'd scowl and accuse her of making things up. It wasn't just irritability, it felt like he was under threat, and his defensiveness came on fast. Soon he became more disoriented. When his wife reminded him what day it was, he packed a suitcase and tried to leave, insisting he didn't belong in that house anymore. Research shows defensiveness toward well-meaning feedback may reflect early cognitive decline. In early decline, people often sense that something is off but don't understand what, and corrections trigger that fear. This tension often stems from reduced cognitive control in the frontal cortex, which regulates impulse and emotion. When someone reacts sharply to harmless comments, it may reflect a fear of losing their grip on reality. Number 8. Frequent emotional shutdowns. 3 years before she was diagnosed with vascular dementia, Nadine, 70, began drifting during family dinners. In the middle of conversations, her eyes would glaze over, her voice would fall silent, and she'd physically turn away. She said she was tired, but the shutdowns grew more frequent and more disconnected from any real reason. Over the years, her memory began to slip. One morning, she poured orange juice into the coffee maker, then waited for it to brew, completely unfazed. That day, her daughter finally called the doctor for help. A recent analysis confirmed that emotional withdrawal and conversational disengagement are early markers of both Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. As processing speed declines, the brain struggles to keep up with fast or layered communication, triggering internal shutdown. These episodes may look like disinterest, but they reflect cognitive overload that silences the mind midstream. When a once chatty person starts going blank or quiet during conversations, it's rarely random. It may be the moment their brain simply runs out of capacity. Number 9. Sudden euphoria or giddiness without cause. Eugene, 72, received a diagnosis of mixed dementia only a year after his family first observed unusual behaviors. He would laugh unexpectedly during solemn occasions, wander around the house humming cheerfully, and engage strangers with a bubbly tone. This behavior lacked joy and instead felt disconcerting and surreal. As his giddiness escalated, so did his detachment from reality. One morning, he baked cupcakes for his childhood classmates, then lined them up on the porch and waited for the school bus to arrive. Experts report that inappropriate highs, sudden joy, silliness, or theatrical behavior are common in early behavioral variant frontotemporal dementia. As the brain starts to break down, it loses control over emotional reactions, causing mood swings that no longer fit the moment. These episodes feel lighthearted but are actually signs of deeper disinhibition. When someone acts strangely giddy, especially if it's unlike them, it may be deterioration hiding behind the smile. Dementia doesn't always start with forgetting. Sometimes, it begins with a sudden change in how someone feels, reacts, or behaves toward others. Repeated mood swings, especially in someone who used to be stable, are not just emotional, they are neurological. When you notice the change and trust your gut, you might catch what their mind is trying so hard to hide.
And there you have it. What are your thoughts? Next, dive into this video for more essential tips to transform your health and help you thrive. You're going to love it. Thanks for watching Healthy End, and we'll see you there.